please speak with your spokesperson? My name is Patience Summers with FederalJack.com. I'm a reporter.
I am the spokesperson.
Outstanding. I had some questions about the State Automated Child Welfare Information System, if you got about 3 minutes or so.
The State Child Welfare Automated Information System? What do you mean, like our database, or what?
Yeah.
Okay, the database, I don't mind answering questions about it. But
Do you mind if I record it so I quote you right?
If you have in-depth questions that you can ask me, and I can try to answer them, and it might be better if you call back Monday when our offices are open and I can get you someone who's actually over the database. But yeah, shoot the questions my way and I'll see if I can answer them.
Okay, you mind if I record it so I quote you right for the article? I don't want to mess it up.
Sure.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm kind of new at this. Okay, so your database system, the State Automated Child Welfare Information System, are you guys looking to hook into the other states anytime soon?
I'm not aware that we're looking to hook into other states anytime soon. Right now, the database is just specific to Utah.
Okay, and any child abuse allegation, or even if somebody was like a foster kid, their foster file is stored in that as well?
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, their entire foster history, so like they should be able to access their records from when they were like 5 years old if they were in the system?
Yeah, you can access, I mean, records are protected, so they could put in a request to get copies of the records, but depending on what's in the records, a lot of the case files have tons of information about different people, so they have to be very careful about what information is released when they do release information.
What level does a social worker have to be able to access such information?
What level?
Yeah.
They have to, in order for someone to actually even have access to the database, they have to have, the executive director has to sign a form basically approving it. So it's people that are doing intake, they have access, people that are actually investigating the cases have access, some people from licensing have access, these are the people that license foster homes or foster parents, that type of thing.
Okay, that's good, that's helpful. What about false and unsubstantiated allegations? Are they left in the files?
Yeah, we don't remove anything from the files. We don't, it's an electronic file, so once it's in the file, it's there. Sometimes people can appeal decisions and they can be overturned, so there would be record that it's overturned, but we don't remove information from the files.
Can false allegations possibly be used, or unsubstantiated allegations be used to assist in the removal of someone's child later, at a later date?
No.
No?
No, what happens with the database, I mean, it's there, and they can refer to it for informational purposes, but we would not remove a child from a home. We can't remove a child because of previous situations. They may be considered, but if we're removing a child, it's because there's an emergency situation and they can no longer be safe in the current place that they're in.
So if somebody had been living in squalor 5 years before, but that wasn't proven, but the notes in the file that they were accused of that, could that be brought up against somebody in a later court hearing?
No, I mean, I think people ask these questions a lot because unfortunately,
that's why I'm doing the article.
Yeah. Who have been abusing drugs and maybe abused drugs and we got involved and helped them out, and they got cleaned up and maintained their kids and got their life together, and then 5 years later, maybe they are using drugs again, or they get an emotional neglect with the allegations made against them. We're looking at the current situation and what current supports people have in place, what people's current abilities are, the current risks for the child. That's what's considered.
So right now, before somebody leaves a hospital with a newborn, why aren't they run through that system before they're released with their infant? Or are they planning?
because we don't assume that everyone that's having a baby has problems. If somebody has a baby at the hospital and the child is tests to be drug endangered, if the mom that they've used, or the child tests positive to be drug endangered, then we look at that case, and each case is unique. So just because somebody's had another child and perhaps they're drug endangered, we're still going to try to help the individual, unless we see that, like I said, the child's completely, it's just not going to be possible for them to be able to be in the home. And even then, we will work on reunification efforts so that at a later date it can happen if we see there's a possibility. But the ultimate decision for a child to either stay in a family or with a parent or not is up to the judge.
Okay.
But we don't just take a child from mom because they've had a previous situation. And there are a lot of people who, unfortunately, have gotten caught up in drugs and have had drug-endangered babies, and then years later, sometimes even a year later, have a child and they're not using drugs at all.
Okay, well, what
if they're fine with their life?
What if somebody was a severely troubled foster child at a young age, let's say 10 to 15 years old, and they were 30 and they had a run-in with CPS with their kid, okay? And it was an allegation. It's not been proven one way or the other, but will the social worker be able to look into that individual's foster care history, even though now they're in their 30s?
Well, it would just depend on, if they have been in Utah, that information would be in the database, but it wouldn't be necessarily relevant to the current case.
But they could see it.
What the worker's going to be looking at is what's going on with the current situation and what factors are present as far as child safety and risk, and what we can do to assist with the current situation.
Okay, but the information would be there to be viewed.
It depends. It might show up that they were collateral, or they were a child in a previous case. It depends too. I think the database, I'm not sure exactly how many years it goes back. I don't know if it goes back 15. It might only go back like 10. I don't remember for sure.
But nothing's ever erased from it.
Pardon me?
But nothing's ever erased from it. Somebody's troubled foster care history would go in with their case if they have their children removed.
It wouldn't go in with their case. If their children are removed current day, that's a new case. The new case is generated every time we get a referral.
No. I'm referring to the actual file. It would all be stored together.
The way the database works, it's not like we have a file that says Sue Smith, and every time we get a call on Sue Smith, we just add one more thing to the file. We actually have case numbers assigned. So each time if we get a referral, then it's a case number, and then there are individuals within the case that may also show up in other case numbers, but we don't just have one file on one person that we're constantly referring to.
So is there a correlation between the case numbers? How would a worker... Well, would there be a correlation between the case numbers so that a social worker would be able to see somebody's history?
Yeah, you could search the database. What happens when someone calls in to make the referral is the first thing we do is, if they have identifying information for typically for the alleged victim, is we'll first start looking. But sometimes for the alleged perpetrator, then we will search the database to see if there's primarily an existing case. Because if there's already an existing case, then the information would go to the current either investigator or caseworker, depending on the status of the case. But then what will happen is, once you do that search, it'll come up, and you might see that there's 5 other Sue Smiths. So then you want to verify date of birth and make sure that if there are some similarities, they will look to see if there are priors or